Hello, this is the screencast for Turner's AP Unit 5 exam. This is over 2 chapters, development and social psychology, but there's a lot of information in those 2 chapters. So first of all, there will be 45 multiple choice questions this time. I know you can still fit that in 30 minutes, and our 2 of our cues, starting with development. Keep in mind it is the social, cognitive, and physical areas of milestones throughout our entire life. We did focus a little bit on infancy, and we did that with the Baby Zeph coloring book that you did together as a class. That's also on my website if you want to review that. We've spent a lot of time in childhood because there's a lot of theories there. We have adolescence as the distinct period of development, and then we have adulthood. Make sure you know the key concepts with adulthood. It's not as lock and step as earlier stages in life. Within childhood, make sure you know those teratogens. They are not good for those mommies and babies, so you want to stay away from those. Make sure when they talk about the word maturation that you understand that that is a biological term. We're not talking about emotional, we're talking about physical. And because it's biological, they're saying it's a universal sequence, so not everybody goes through puberty at the same time. However, the sequence that they go through for puberty would be the same. Dominant and recessive genes with our phenotypes and genotypes, and we made babies by flipping coins. So go back and look at this. Not too, I don't think that'd be too difficult. I think you've had this a lot before in biology. The idea of androgyny, having both masculine and feminine characteristics. And the parenting styles, make sure you know all 3, but make sure you know the difference between authoritative and authoritarian. And how do we do research with babies? They can't tell us much, so we watch their eye movement, or we give them special pacifiers to see how hard they suck on the pacifier, or if they turn their heads, those sorts of things. And spent a lot of time with Piaget. This was a review from Intro. Not only knowing his 4 stages of pre-operational, sensory motor, pre-operational, concrete operational, and formal operational, but also the specifics within each of those, object permanence, animism, and so forth. And then really the criticisms that people kind of agreed with the order of his stages, but they said they were really happening much younger than what he said they were occurring. Other specific developmental theorists, Vygotsky, he was really much more on the nature side, talked about how first kids would hear other people give directions, and then they would start saying that to themselves, and then finally they would internalize those directions. And he also talked about the zone of proximal development. It starts with me and then it goes out. Harry Harlow, when his monkey study, taking those monkeys, poor little Reese monkeys, and giving them a wire mother or a cloth mother. Bowlby, his phases of attachment, as well as Ainsworth, who was his protege, so to speak. He mentored her, but she talked about the types of attachment once you've gone through those phases. So make sure you get all those straight in your head. Conrad Lorenz and the idea of imprinting, obviously stronger in certain animals. Humans don't imprint unless you watch, what was those vampire movies? They did that. Anyway, Kohlberg's, he has 3 levels, pre-conventional, conventional, post-conventional, but then within each level he has 2 stages, so make sure you're familiar with those. Gilligan, who wrote about Kohlberg's ideas and said, you know what, I don't know if this is true for women, I don't know if this is true in collectivist cultures. Kohlberg, I don't know, you're not quite right. Erickson's 8 stages. Trust versus mistrust, autonomy versus doubt, and so on and so on. Make sure that you know that those age limits do apply, in that you're not going to have a 2-year-old in generativity versus self-absorption. You're not going to have a 28-year-old in trust versus mistrust. And then Elizabeth Keebler-Ross, her stages of grief, DABDA was the acronym that we used. There's some debate as to whether this is universal or not, but do know how to apply those stages. And also in adolescence, the difference between primary and secondary sexual characteristics as far as what do we need to procreate. The idea of the imaginary audience, people are always looking at me, mostly in middle school. And then Marcia, this was added especially into the identity versus role confusions part of Erickson's theory, and he talked about foreclosure, moratorium, diffusion, and achievement. And remember, those don't go in order. It's kind of a mix and match deal. You might go through all of them, you might go through none of them, so not a step theory like we're used to. And then G. Stanley Hall, storm and stress. Adolescence is nothing but biological storm and stress. In adulthood, much from reading. I'm not sure what that means. Make sure you read well. For a cognitive task, do note the difference between cross-sectional and longitudinal research as far as what their outcome is for intelligence, because we do get that cohort effect when we do a cross-sectional study. So go back and review that. Recall versus recognition. Recall tends to be a little more difficult as we age, where recognition, there does not seem to be any impairments in that. Fluid versus crystallized intelligence. This is again the same thing as we had when we had the cognitive unit. So make sure you can give examples of those, and more importantly in this unit, what changes with age. Hint, hint, fluid. And then finally, social and emotional changes. Emotionally, things tend to level out. The highs aren't as high, the lows aren't as low. And then from social psychology, my favorite chapter, make sure you can define it, how the individual affects the group and how the group affects the individual. Lots and lots of famous studies for this one. So make sure you know the conformity study with the ash line study, where somebody else said the answers first and they were obviously wrong answers. What am I going to do? Do I conform or not? We have Milgram shock experiment that you again learned about in intro psych, where am I going to hurt someone simply because an authority figure tells me to? Role-playing, Zimbardo's prisoner study, and how much people can just really get into the role of things and change their whole persona. Cognitive dissonance with Fetzinger. I'm going to take this really boring task and then I'm going to get paid to tell somebody it wasn't boring, but which one is going to make me feel better, if I don't get paid a lot or if I do get paid a lot? And because my thinking's telling me one thing, my emotions are telling me another, something's got to give. So make sure you review that. And then the bystander effect, aka diffusion of responsibility. In this case, it is false. You do not have safety in numbers. People are more likely to think somebody else is going to take care of you. With our social attitudes, how do we gain pro-social or anti-social attitudes? Kind of looks back to the learning unit with that one. Fundamental attribution error. When we see somebody, we attribute their idea and we say that's their whole disposition instead of considering the situation. Foot in the door versus door in the face. Foot in the door, I'm going to make teeny tiny little requests and build up to get you to do more and more things I want you to do, versus door in the face, I'm going to start with an absolute no and then maybe back down on my request. Routes of persuasion. Think about the commercials. Is it a central route of persuasion that's giving me facts, or is the peripheral route of persuasion give me sex appeal or something else? Explanatory styles, pessimistic and optimistic explanatory style. How do we view the events in our life? Social facilitation. If I'm already good at something and people are watching me, I do better. If I'm already sucky at something, like Miss Turner playing golf, then I'm going to do worse when people are watching me. Wow, I really wanted you to know pro-social and antisocial. So, social loafing. Somebody else in the group will take care of it. Think, what did we do for social loafing? I can't remember. The tug of war was the example in your book. De-individuation, I act in a way I normally wouldn't because I'm anonymous. I'm part of that mob mentality. I wouldn't normally pick on this person, but because everybody else is, I join in. Group think. Nobody wants to say something wrong and disagree with the rest of the group, so we go along with it, even though it's not correct. Think the Bay of Pigs invasion. Group polarization. The longer the people are in their separate groups, the bigger the polarization becomes, and obviously whatever group you're in is the in-group. Oh, and we think more highly of those people. And altruism. This is a nice concept. We do something just because it's the right thing to do. We don't expect payment. We don't expect anything else. Relating to others, the chameleon effect, when we kind of mirror in body language and nodding our head and that sort of thing. Normative versus informational social influence, hint FRQ. Normative, I follow group behavior because I don't want to be penalized. I don't butt in line because people will get mad. Informational influence, well, I heard so-and-so say this, so that must be the fact. I heard the principal say this, so this must be what's going on. Stereotype versus prejudice versus discrimination. I'm going to speed up here so I don't run out of time, but make sure you can distinguish what those are. The just world phenomenon. We live in a just world, so because of that, good things happen to good people and bad things happen to bad people. And then we kind of go into the blame the victim idea. Oh, well, if you wouldn't have been a bad person, then that wouldn't have happened to you. Attraction versus being attractive. So what are the elements that help to increase attraction, i.e. something like proximity, versus what are the benefits you get from being an attractive person? People are going to help me out. They're going to think I'm smarter. They're going to think I'm worth more money if I'm attractive. Competition versus cooperation. And what that does to group relationships. Competition, it helps my in-group, but it's going to make it worse with my out-group. Cooperation, look back, hopefully we did this activity in class with the marbles, but think about resources and whether we have limited resources or unlimited resources and how that ties in as well. Social traps. Do you want 3 points of extra credit or 7 points of extra credit? If we look out for ourselves, everybody loses. Self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm told this about myself so long that I start believing it and acting that way. Mirror image. Think about world leaders, and like if there's somebody that Americans don't like, then the people in that country think the same thing about our world leaders. Social exchange theory. Do the benefits outweigh the cost? If they do, I'm going to do this behavior. If they don't, forget it. Culture, norms versus memes. Norms are much more longer lasting than memes are. Ethnocentrism, the belief that your system, your way, your culture is better than others. Symbols that we use to communicate and kind of solidify our cultures. Collectivist versus individual. There was a T-chart that compared and contrasted those, so go over that. And finally, for the FRQ, there'll be one for each chapter. So do think about like a group watching a sporting event and how all those social concepts can tie into behavior in both good and bad ways. And how can you apply developmental theories to raising a child? I think there'll be a couple raising a child in your FRQ. And yeah, that's it. So, okay, see you later. Bye.